You're listening to the Otasso Outdoors Podcast.
And we're rolling. Guys, this is going to be the first episode without the do-do-dos because this is the first episode that I am flying solo by myself. Welcome back to the Otasso Outdoors Podcast. I'm Caleb. I'm your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, you are likely to find one of a couple different segments. Segment number one is What You Got, Buddy? What You Got, Buddy is where we bring some pre-prepared articles and or headlines into the PodBunker, and we discuss them amongst ourselves at length. They can be as short as 12 minutes and as long as an hour. Segment number two is our Spotlight series. That's where we kind of tap into our network of cool people that we've met from all over the realms and the hunting industry and the outdoors industry, and we hopefully get them down into the PodBunker to have conversations about who they are, what makes them drive, and all that fun stuff. So you clicked on it. You know what it is today. In the flesh, in person, in the PodBunker, we have Mr. Alex Hunt.
How's it going?
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for giving me the first one-on-one podcast experience.
Excited to do it.
This is going to be freaking awesome.
Absolutely.
So a little bit of backstory. We recently met Alex through our friends over at Doe Patrol. They had their donation day, and we went to kind of film and take photos and capture all of that. And Alex gave us a bunch of expertise and knowledge on dog tracking. And he was talking to everybody about it. I'm like, holy cow, this guy's really, really good. We got to get him in the PodBunker. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
You're driving all the way over here.
Yeah, of course, man. Excited. It's an awesome place.
What are your first impressions of the PodBunker?
Well, I mean, I knew you called it the PodBunker. And then when I came out here, I think my first words were, oh, man, it really is a bunker. So, yeah, it's great, man. What a cool spot.
It's small. Do not bring your family if the world comes to an end.
Yeah.
I've got cigars for 4 people, and that's it.
There it is. There it is.
Okay, so what's the name of your business?
Yeah, so we're Hunt's Canine Game Recovery. I think putting it as a business is probably a stretch, but that's what we are.
Does it make you an income on an annual basis?
I mean, yeah, I suppose it does. I suppose so. Then it's a business. Then it's a business. It's a hobby business, but it's a great one.
Okay, so if it's a hobby business, then what is your main source of income? What do you do for work?
Yeah. So I'm in medical sales. So I work for a women's health company called Hologic.
Okay.
So anything breast cancer related.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So,
how'd you get into that?
Yeah, great question. Well, I actually, I went to Hope to probably major in baseball, actually. And I was there going to get a teaching degree, and my aunt always was hammering me about needing to get into sales ever since I was a little kid. And she owned a seafood company based out of Chile. She was part owner of it. And I didn't do well in school. I jokingly tell everybody I'm a failed gym teacher. And it actually was the best failure that I ever could have had, because it opened my door into sales and really allowed me to, take on strengths I didn't realize I had as a 18 to 22 year old of, talking to people and building relationships. Yeah. And so I started selling seafood for her, and then I got into medical sales after that with a couple other connections.
No way.
It's been awesome.
What was it like selling seafood?
Probably nothing like you're imagining. I sold literally truckloads at a time, so 40,000 pounds at a time. So I was selling.
Okay. Were you selling straight to distributors?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Okay. So we were exporters of Chile and then importers into the United States. Yeah.
What was the top seafood product that you guys sold?
Salmon.
No way.
Salmon, crab. Yeah. Yep.
You were slinging fish. That's freaking awesome.
I was.
I mean, if that doesn't like speak volumes to buy in bulk, sell in bulk.
Oh yeah,
that's freaking awesome. Man.
Oh yeah, I could tell you way more about your grocery store food than you probably want to know.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
We'll do a separate podcast episode for that one because I'm sure it goes deep.
It does. It does. It does way more. Every time I'm walking in any type of meat aisle now, I'm like, okay.
All right, so let's talk about dog tracking.
Yeah.
So medical sales is
Mhm.
what you do day by day.
Yes, sir.
And then when the fall rolls around,
Mhm.
how do you balance sales with getting phone calls at 10 o'clock at night
Yeah.
saying I can't find him?
Yeah. Great question. I'd say a lot of it starts way before that, right? It's, throughout the summer and the training and everything like that, but that's
right.
not as, that's not as urgent, and can kind of plan my training schedule and things like that around that, around work and family and whatever else. But when the fall comes around, the phone is blowing up, often. And it's just, it's when I have the time to do it. So, for me, because of having, 2 young daughters, like we were talking about earlier, 6 and 8 years old, plus having a demanding job with my time, it is when I have the time to do it, which is great. It gets me out of the house and gets me into the woods, and oftentimes a lot less sleep is really the answer. So, yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy dog tracking?
Man, my initial reaction is way over 10. I guess it depends on if I've been in a murky mud pit for hours and don't find somebody's deer. I might answer a 1 after something like that. But I was just talking with somebody the other day, the relationship that I'm able to have with my dog is, anybody who's ever had, I don't want to say just a hunting dog, but really a working dog in general, anyone that's ever had that you're out there in the woods with your best friend.
That's freaking awesome. That is. Where did the passion for it come from? Where did it start? Can you take us back there?
Yeah, definitely. As a little kid, same aunt that got me that first job, actually, coincidentally, she brought, long story short, convinced my parents to take on her German Shepherd puppy. And so we had this German Shepherd that I loved as a little kid. His name was Bruno. And we didn't ever do anything with him. My parents, we trained him and had him around the house, and he was a really cool dog. And, he was a German Shepherd. And I always had this affection for working dogs after that, particularly pointy-eared dogs, which is rare in the hunting space. But yeah, that's really where it started.
Okay. So tell us about the dog.
Yeah.
Where did it all start?
Yeah. My dog now or him? My dog now.
Your dog now.
Yeah. So my dog now, his name's Jax. He is a German Shepherd and Belgian Malinois mix, which is,
No way.
Yeah. So for listeners who maybe don't know, it's what most Belgian Malinois are what most police and military dogs are. So we had done some fostering of some Malinois puppies that were going to be, one in particular that was going to go be either a police canine or a personal protection dog. And we only had him for maybe a couple months. And we had my youngest daughter, Brooklyn, at the time was just learning how to crawl. And if you know anything about Malinois and a crawling baby, they're both basically puppies, and the Malinois was nipping on everything. And so it was a wild experience for sure.
Sharks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I actually was super, we didn't have the dog. We didn't foster it for as long as we initially were going to. But I had so much fun with it. I had a blast with it, and I was really bummed afterwards. My wife Lexi would tell you that I was borderline depressed afterwards. And so, man, it's just now looking at it, I wouldn't have thought about it this way at the time, but definitely, God thing. A couple months later, she is at work, and somebody that she works with comes to the eye care clinic where she's working at, and they bring in this pointy-eared dog, and, it was after it had closed, and they're like, yeah, I need a place for this dog. It was one of her coworkers, family members or something like that. And, I need a place for this dog, and I'm not really sure. I'm going to have to take it to the pound. It was a little under a year old, 11, 12 months old, something like that. And my wife, he goes right up. Dogs love my wife. They right up to her, and she starts petting him, and she's like, well, I'll take him. And so she calls me. I'm at my parents' house picking up both my daughters, actually. And she calls me and she says, hey, I'm bringing somebody home with me from work. And I was like, okay. It wasn't out of the ordinary that she would maybe bring a coworker that needed a place to go. And so I thought, okay, like this is, par for the course. She's going to bring somebody to the house that needs to, come and hang out. I just didn't know that it was a furry, four-legged friend.
Let's go.
And she FaceTimes me, and there's the pointy-eared dog, big pointy-eared black dog sitting in her back seat. And that was the start of it. So he came to the house, and she said, hey, you know enough working dog people, either you'll find a place for him or you'll teach him a job. And that was the start of it.
That's awesome. Now, where'd the name come from? Was that already named by the breeder? Or
No. So he was named by the previous owners. His name was Jackson.
Okay.
But one of my best friend's names is Jackson, so it just wasn't going to work out. We changed it to Jax.
I love it, which is JAX, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's so cool. Okay. Right. Now, here's my question. In the dog tracking realm for deer, like you said, pointed ear deer dogs, you really don't see them a lot.
That's right.
In that realm. I have not interacted with a whole lot of dog trackers, only a handful, but it always seems like they're, Chesapeake Bays or Bloodhounds or whatever it may be. They're always the ones that are kind of bred for that, other than the upland bird hunting.
That's right.
Is that more of a common thing now than people think? Have you ever interacted with other dog trackers that have pointed ears?
Yes, I have. There's a couple people around the country. There's very few in the state of Michigan.
Because I just think about every time you go through TSA or you were at a big event or something like that, they're walking around, they've got the drug dogs and they're sniffing. I mean, 3 out of 5 of them are pointed ears.
Very true. A lot of it with military or TSA, excuse me, or police work is an intimidation factor. So like some of those dogs, some of those dogs only actually do nose work. They don't actually do any of the bite work. But yes, traditionally speaking, it's hounds and, floppy eared dogs for tracking. But it's, you could go take a dog from the pound, and if that dog has the drive to work, it's going to be a great dog. It has nothing. I mean, yes, there is
some DNA, but what you're saying is, though, any dog can really be trained to do it.
Any dog could be trained to do it. They have to have the drive to do it. They have to have the work ethic to do it.
So that's a part of like the breed.
Yes,
the breed.
Yeah,
some of them are working dogs. Like you could probably teach a husky maybe to do it.
There's dogs that are very unlikely that they would be able to do it. Right. Just based on. I got another mutt at home and he could use his nose, but to find food, but he's afraid of his own shadow, so he can't do it. Right. So you have to have certain particular things about the dog, but yes, it is in a general sense, very, it's, if you call a dog tracker, more than 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be a pointy-eared dog that comes out.
How about beagles? Do you see beagles quite a bit?
There are beagles that do it, but there's not too many beagles that do it. Not in the state of Michigan, at least.
I know a lot of guys that use beagles for like rabbits and coons, and then you've got the short hairs for the upland bird hunting and stuff. But guys, there's your challenge. Be the first ever Chihuahua dog tracker.
There it is. That's right.
It might be tough, but it is doable.
It's doable. I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so outside of dog tracking, you're clearly into hunting.
Yeah. So dog tracking is what got me into hunting.
No way.
I never grew up. My dad is like what I would consider a true outdoorsman.
Okay. So you're not first generation in your family.
So I'll back up a little bit. He never hunted when I was growing up. And by true outdoorsman, he's an arborist by trade.
No way.
Yeah. So he's a big tree guy. He's a big bird guy. He loves birds. He's
just not a big hunter.
No, he did growing up, and he talks about beagles that he had as a kid, and but since I was born, he never hunted. It wasn't something we did. He often tells me that it's, mostly because I was either, I was out playing baseball all the time, that we didn't have time to do it.
It's a busy schedule.
Yeah. But actually the dog is what got me into it. So when we got Jax, and my wife had told me, she said, either you're going to find him a job or you'll find somebody that can give him a job. And so initially I was like, what job can I do? I actually started training him on, it's going to sound funny, but I was just doing random scent work with him on coffee grounds. Like I was training him to indicate on coffee grounds, and he was like getting it a little bit. So I was like, oh, this is interesting, like more detection work than tracking. And I actually went online and found I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this right, but it's Dog Bone Hunter. And it's this guy who has a bunch of training videos and training products on either shed hunting or tracking. So I went online, and like I said, I didn't hunt, but I could, you could physically, I think I got it on Amazon, and you could buy like a deer hide. So I bought a deer hide, and it had like a little bottle of scent in it, of like mixed some type of scent with it. And I got it, and I started just dragging it around the yard. I honestly didn't know what I was doing, but he loved it.
So there was never any intention to get into dog tracking from the beginning?
No, never intention.
Dude,
never.
That's even better.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I jokingly tell everybody we're the true underdogs because,
dude, I love this.
He's technically a rescue dog, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue. And so I started doing that a little bit, and I was, I was loving it. I was enjoying working with the dog. That's what I really wanted to do. That's what got me into this, right? I would say most dog trackers probably have a story of where they lost a deer and they called another tracker. Mine was just pure love of working dogs. And, I had listened to another podcast actually, and a friend, Tony Hill, was on it. And I don't remember which podcast it was. And I was buying books. I was reading books. I was listening to podcasts, anything that I could get my hands on to try to learn how to train my dog better, and specifically for this, because I was trying to figure out, could he actually do this? I had a couple friends who hunted. I thought, oh, maybe they'll let me track their deer. And so I find Tony on Instagram, and I message him, and his dog's name is Fred. So all his stuff is Find It Fred.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And he has a hound. And So I messaged him, and he messaged me right back, and we ended up, sharing phone numbers and talking. And I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I have no clue what I'm doing, but I think he's okay at it. And I had talked to a couple local, actually Holland police canine officers, and they had helped me a little bit. I was trying to just learn as much as I could, and just in general tracking with the dog. And so Tony's like, hey, I'm going to lay a track for you, a practice track, and then you can come out and you can run it, and we'll just see if you or the dog are any good at it. So I was like, all right. And when I tell you I had no clue what I was doing, I had no clue. I showed up in waterproof sneakers and sweatpants. And I'm like, I didn't even trudging through the woods, man. I didn't know, right? Like, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure I get out of my car with my dog, and Tony was probably thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And he actually was the oldest track he had done. It was 7 hours old, a practice track, 7 hours old. And he crushed it. And I had no idea he was even doing a good job. And we get towards the end of it, and Tony was more shocked than anything after watching me get out of the car. And he's like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to the Michigan Deer Tracking Network and the guys that kind of run that. And, you can test your dog and get in the group and, get going. And that was kind of how the start of it.
How much of that came from your pre-hand preparedness with doing the coffee grounds and just like the messing around and the learning? It was it all of a sudden you were like, holy crap, this all just came to a head?
Yeah, I think you mean is like him being successful on that practice track. Yeah, I would say a lot, because the dogs have to understand the target scent. They have to understand what you're asking them to do. And he understood what he was being asked to do. So then when the challenge was much harder, when Tony did it, right, I was doing what we would consider puppy drags, is I was just dragging a piece of deer hide behind for a couple 100 yards. And honestly, I was doing it at like local football stadiums and baseball fields and whatever. And then I'd get him out of the car and put him on it right away. So I had like no wait time. It was basically immediate. So it was him understanding his target scent. And then Tony did it with, the tracking shoes where you put the hooves on the bottom, and then we waited 7 hours and came out. And he just understood the target scent at that point. That wasn't as much of a challenge for him as I thought it was going to be.
Okay. So for the listeners that are unfamiliar with this whole process, explain the tracking shoes.
Yeah. So basically tracking shoes, there's a couple different varieties of them, but it's for training, it's for training your dog. And you have these boots, basically. Well, they're shoes that strap onto the bottom of your boots, and you ratchet in a cut off deer hoof into the bottom of it. And then you walk through the woods with those deer hoof, the hooves on the bottom. And some people will drop little bits of blood behind them as they walk through the woods, but you as a person are walking with these deer hooves on the bottom of your boots strapped in, and you're walking through, and that's how you lay a practice track.
All right. So I want you to give it to us straight, because all the things I've ever heard as far as dog and deer tracking goes is that the dog is following a hormone that is released by a specific hormone that gets released when a deer is like wounded or hurt and it's running and it's in like flight mode. And that's why it's like, oh, there's no blood, but they can still follow the trail.
Yeah.
Is that a misconception? Is that true? Do they follow blood? Do they follow tracks? Because I know there's scent glands in the hoofs. I think we had a trivia game one time that we did, and there was like 6 different pairs of glands that deer have all over the place. But between the hooves is one of them. So break that down for us.
So my answer is going to be yes.
Okay.
The dog tracks all of that. So, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. But at the end of the day, this is the story. I usually tell it as we're walking to a track or we've just started it. I try to talk to the hunters quite a bit so they don't think I'm just taking my dog for a walk in the woods. So that deer, let's say, I'm going to back up a little bit here. Let's say, you're a bad guy, okay? And you steal a car. And you get out of that car, you ditch the car, and you steal it, and you run away. And you're being chased by a canine officer and his dog, okay? And they're tracking you. You are going to be pretty scared, right? You are dumping adrenaline, basically. And not only that, but also your individual scent as well. So you're dumping adrenaline and your individual scent as you run away, okay?
I wonder if that's the scent my wife is attracted to.
If it must be, huh?
Musky.
But a deer is basically doing the same thing, right? You shoot a deer, and while it didn't steal a car, it's still dumping adrenaline, right? It might know what hit it or it might not, but it's scared and it's running, and so it's dumping this adrenaline smell it's hurt is basically what it comes down to, is that deer is hurt. And not only that, but that deer's dander smells very specific as well. Sure, it's interdigital gland as well, which is in between the hoof. But then also the dog it will try, the physical evidence is a cherry on top of that scent picture for the dog. So you have the grass being broken or the dirt being stirred up. If you were to reach down into the dirt and you take your hand and you pick it up and, you stir the dirt around, that dirt has a smell. The dog would smell that disturbed earth is really what it is. So the broken grass, the bent grass, the tree limb that cracks off,
that's nuts.
All of those things break out a smell, and that is a disturbance smell, right? And so that smell goes away pretty quick, but on a hot track or on a track, pretty immediate is still there. So the deer the dog is tracking that, but then it's also tracking the individual deer, and that the fear scent is a big part of it, but then the dander, the hair, and then anything physical from the shot, being blood, bone, gut matter, anything like that, that's a cherry on top for the dog. That's helpful. That doesn't always need that, but it
all lets off scent.
All of that makes this one big scent picture, is what we call it, for the dog.
Of that specific deer, because
Yes.
every deer will carry its own.
That's right.
No way.
That's right.
No, how
Just like us, we all, like you said, must be what your wife's attracted to, right?
Right.
We all smell a little different.
Okay, so for dogs, I know dogs are so different than humans. When we're, say for instance, you're in the kitchen and someone's cooking something.
Yeah.
And say it's chili.
Yep.
You can smell the chili and you're like, wow, that's good. Now, when a dog is on a track like that, can he compartmentalize all those scents?
Yeah. So what you're referring to there's a common, and I might have even mentioned it when I spoke at the Doe Patrol event. If you walk into a kitchen and your mom is cooking chili, you smell that chili. Mm-hmm. That dog smells every ingredient.
He smells
chili.
Onions.
That's right.
Okay, so
the salt, everything.
That's where I wonder if deer do the same thing for us, because you spray everyone's like, oh yeah, scent control. But what about that one section of your boot that you missed? Are deer going to be able to pick out those different?
Yes. I like I had already
Hunt the
mentioned.
wind, guys.
Yes, that's right. Like I had already mentioned, I didn't grow up hunting, right? But it's funny to me listening to hunters now talk about all the scent control, because I'm sure it helps, but that deer have better scent than dogs do. And if a dog can do all of these crazy things with its nose. That scent control you're putting on your clothes isn't doing much. It might do something, but really it is, like your point, hunt the wind. That's what it is.
They're smelling the fleece from Thailand. They're smelling
That's right. That's
They're
right.
smelling your dead downwind. They're smelling the Nutter Butter that you just ate.
That's right. That's in the bag. That's in your bag, right? You're worried about like what your clothes smell like. You put them in scent lock boxes. You don't wash them. You don't.
That
all these
Plano
things.
tub smells like plastic.
Exactly. In what's in your backpack, I promise you, or what's in your bag when you climb up in that tree, whatever that snack is, I promise you that deer can smell it if the wind hits right.
That is where a lot of the guys that swear by the ozonics machines, that the ozone machines that they put above them in the tree. I could see how maybe that'd be a gimmick, but I could see how that might be better.
So there was, I'm not going to remember the dog handler's name nor the dog's name, but there was a canine officer that won this competition, this show that used to be on, I don't know what channel. It wasn't that long ago. I wish I remembered it now. But I saw a YouTube clip of these hunters that wanted to look at these different products, these different scent control products. And I don't remember exactly how they set it up, but they put 5 or 6 blinds out, and they would put different scent control in each, or they used different scent control each time. And they put the hunter in the blind, and then the dog didn't see which blind that the person went in. And they would use a different scent control every time. And the dog never wasted a second finding that person. So that dog was trained on indicating on people, right? Tracking people. And they would put the person in one of these blinds, basically. And then the dog, where it couldn't see anything, and the dog would go out and he would run past all the other blinds and then sit down right next to the one that person was in every time. And they were testing out different scent controls. And it didn't work. Like, they were trying to differentiate what scent control method works best. Well, basically what the dog told them was none of them work.
Guys, you're wasting your money. You heard it here first.
I'm sure to some degree, right? I'm sure to some degree it helps. It certainly doesn't hurt. Let's put it that way. I just highly doubt that it's helping as much as you think it is.
Yeah. If you decide not to shower, it might help take some of the BO away. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, sounds like you got to throw it away.
Ready? I got another myth buster I'll throw at you.
Nail us with
All right.
it.
When have you heard, right? Once again, not a hunting background, but when have you heard that it's good to check your trail cams? What kind of weather?
Oh, I haven't. I guess I haven't, because with all the cell cams these days, it's just like,
that's true.
Every 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's so true. What I have heard is that people say, well, when it rains, when it rains, you should go check because it's washing away the scent.
True, and the bucks will go back and hit their scrapes.
Sure. So what I can tell you is that oftentimes rain helps with the scent. So the rain will make the scent actually better. So if it does that for dogs, I guarantee it's probably doing that for the deer as well. So if you think that you're going out and checking your, if you don't have a cell cam, if you're going out and checking your trail cameras and you're doing it when it rains because you think that that's better for the scent control,
you're leaving more.
The rain actually, depending, okay, so some of the very common things we get as dog trackers, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this too, but just sticking with the rain is, it's going to rain. I need you to come out and track this right now. It's like, well, first of all, the dog doesn't care if it rains. The dog's not looking for blood. The dog's not looking for these things. It's just using its nose. Second of all, moisture is good for scent conditions. Moisture is very good. So actually, the right amount of rain makes the scent even stronger. So you could have let's call it a 24-hour-old track, really, to that dog. There's no way to quantify it, but basically to that dog, if you get the right amount of rain and you have the right temperatures and conditions, it could be more like a 7-hour-old track.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So it really amplifies it.
It does. It's there's a couple people that'll say, like, if you drop a little drop of blood on a countertop, okay, and it dries out. Okay, so now that blood you leave it for a day, it dries out. It's like crusty on the table. And then you take a little water dropper and you drop a little bit of water on it. What does it do? It rehydrates that blood. So it actually brings that scent back out.
Huh. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, so everybody that freaks out about if you're calling a dog and the tracker's saying, hey, we'll come in 12 hours and you're freaking out because it's going to rain, chill out. It's all right.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so for the people that are listening, I would like you to go into, I know we talked about this and I heard you talk about this a little bit. I would like you to go into the process of you shoot a deer, what are the top 5 most practical steps, or like what should we do as hunters?
Yeah, I'm gonna start before you shoot the deer.
Okay.
Know your local dog tracker. Call them before the season. I get, especially during the rut, my phone blows up, right? And I've got friends who do 150, 200 tracks. And that's a lot, right?
In a season.
In a season.
Oh my
In 3 months, they're doing 150, 200 plus tracks.
Holy smokes.
And I don't do nearly that many, and my phone still blows up. So imagine theirs, right? So let's say you call me, right? Say you're one of my neighbors. You live somewhere in Robinson Township near where I live. And you call me and you say, hey, look, my name's, Joe, and I'm a local hunter, and I've never needed a dog before. And I don't plan on needing one, but I saw you're close, and I just wanted to touch base with you, let you know that, like, this is where I hunt, and, if I ever need you, I'd love for you to come out. I'm going to save that guy's number, and if he calls, it's going to say Joe. Is that what I said? Is that the name I used? Joe Hunter, Robinson Township. I'm going to save it in my phone just as that. So when he calls me, I'm going to be more apt to answer that guy's call than I am somebody else's, right? Because my phone's blowing up.
Number.
Right. And so, you get to as many as you can, you get back to as many people as you can. But at the end of the day, during those couple weeks of the rut, it's chaos, right? It's chaos. And, you can't get to everybody, especially myself or other people who have families and other jobs. You can't get to everybody. So that's a great way to do it. The other thing is get property permission first. So before you, look out in West Michigan where I'm at, there's a lot of 5, 10, 20 acres.
Yeah.
My dog can cross a 20-acre piece of land in seconds.
Yep.
Right? Just like that deer does. That deer runs so fast after you shot it. I don't care if you're hunting on one far side and it runs to the other far side of that 20 acres, it's going to cover it really fast within seconds. And my dog's going to be able to do the same, not as fast as the deer right after it got shot, right? But we go on to one of the two most common things is tracking too early. We don't get the deer because of that, or property permission. So I can't trespass, right? My dog can go over the line. I'll have to call him back. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to risk my dog's life or my safety, for your deer as much as I oftentimes want to, and sometimes push the limits in certain situations. The dog's safety and my safety, and frankly, the hunters and whoever else is, it's under it's my responsibility at that point. And so get property permission.
How often is that part of your like preliminary phone call? Like, do you run into it's like, do you have permission?
Yes.
What percentage of hunters say yes, and which ones say what percentage say no?
I don't know. I would say most probably say yes, or maybe a lot say I don't know.
I can't imagine, and at least I think with Onyx and HuntWise and everything,
yes,
it has made things so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can find names, you can go on Facebook, whereas before it was just word of mouth. You call Joe next door and say, hey, do you know who owns that side? And I can't imagine.
No, it's definitely easier because of Onyx and HuntWise. On HuntWise, the number's right on there, right? So I've tried to help people get permission before, especially if I think there's a good chance their deer's dead, I'm going to try to help them out. But yeah, it becomes a big issue. I could give you several instances this year and past year where we got stopped because of property and weren't able to recover a deer I thought was recoverable, or later somebody else found it, but we couldn't go any further because we got stopped. There's many situations like that.
Okay. So call your dog tracker before the season.
That's right.
That's number one. Number two is get permission.
Yep.
Before the season.
That's
just
right.
Like, hey, meet all your neighbors. Just talk with your neighbors. I mean, at the end of the day, what's going to go wrong with that? I mean, you're going to find out pretty early on of just like, okay, better put a brush pile there because I want my deer to go the other way.
Right. It's
just building that community and understanding what your neighbors are doing and who they are and what kind of hunter they are and everything. I feel like that's just, it's a win-win. Plus you want to be able to go pick up the phone and shoot a text and say, hey, can we bring a dog through here? And have them say, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. And then I would say next, it's, you take the shot trying to note where the deer goes. I know obviously it's a blur, right? And totally understand that, but noting where the deer goes, not tracking too early. That would probably be number 3, is don't track too early.
I always had a buddy that would say he would always take a cigar with him. And if he shoots a deer, he sits down and he smokes that cigar, which is usually 30 to 45 minutes. And then at that point,
I love that.
So-
I love that. That's great.
So if you don't want to do that, quietly climb down out of your tree, walk to your truck.
That's right.
Check your phone, take your gear off, keep for the love of everything good, keep your freaking weapon on you.
Yeah.
You need to have that. But
yeah, even a good shot, you need to give time, right? Like, look, dead deer don't run. If that deer's dead, it's going to lay down and die, and it's going to be there right now, and it's going to be there in 12 hours, right? And obviously, I understand that, temperature plays into that. If you shoot a doe in early season and it's really warm out, you don't want the meat to spoil, or any deer really, but
it'll take a while though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Think about that deer's body temperature.
Right.
It's got to dip, and then it's got to get warm again.
That's right. I think that's
hours.
Yeah, but a hunter tracking too early and pushing a deer off to where we can't get it anymore, or you jump a deer once, it might go another couple hundred yards. You jump it twice, maybe a little further. It's every time you jump a deer, your percentages go down. So if you jump it or you find a bed, get out of there, call a tracker. That's my best piece of advice with that.
Is there a specific difference between jumping a deer and bumping a deer?
No, same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. Yeah.
Because I've heard both terms used
That's
before.
a great question. I'm not sure if anybody uses it as two different things, but no, I've always used it as the same.
Okay. I'm trying to remember. It was somebody that was talking about, like, they said, oh, I bumped a deer, and the bumping of the deer wasn't like an intense scare.
Okay.
It was kind of like when you're walking in, you bump a deer and they might jump up and hop off a little bit and stand.
Yeah.
And then they talked about jumping a deer was like up and full on run.
Here's the thing. A lot of times you don't even know you do it.
True.
People will continue tracking, and then they're blood and more blood, and they feel like they see all this blood, and they have no idea what they're actually doing is pushing that deer. Like, they're not even giving it time to lay down and die or make a bed or anything like that. They're not giving it the time at all. They just are continuing to track, but it's ahead of them, right? Whether it's the wind or you're tracking with your buddies and you're loud or whatever it is, you're likely not even realizing that you're actually just chasing that deer. You're not even tracking it.
You're just continually pushing them, and you can't even see them because they're that far ahead of you. Explain to everybody the whole aspect of how much blood is in a white-tailed deer, because you're saying, you might be on a track and you just constantly are seeing blood. It's a walking blood trail.
Yes.
Explain
why
that's not
the best way. The best way I can explain it is if you were to take a kitchen knife, right, and you were to cut your hand on your palm, and you were to walk around with it and start touching things and swing your hand around or start running around, you'd be spraying blood everywhere. But that cut isn't doing anything to you. That cut is you're bleeding a lot, but your body is made up of so much blood, right, that's not going to impact you. A deer is the same way. The amount of blood a deer has to lose in order to die of blood loss is insane. It would be such a huge blood trail. I think the video that you probably saw, I think I showed it, is somebody mixed basically water and some other substances to make it the same viscosity of blood, and they poured it out. And it's a long video of them just pouring, I think it was paint that they mixed at the right, like...
Wasn't it a 2-liter bottle?
But it was multiple 2-liter bottles. They went from one to the next. And if you were to run through the woods with a 2-liter bottle, you can make it a really long ways before it empties out.
You think about your average blood trail is drip, 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 drip.
Yep.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is okay, I just want to make sure that we've got all the key points covered there. So we've got the call your local dog tracker. We have make sure you've got permission. Please wait. Don't jump. Know where you hit the deer. I guess my follow-up would be self-filming has gotten really, really popular these days. Our buddies down in Jackson with Painted Arrow Outdoors, they created the Mag Pro for the bow. They do it for crossbows, and it's so easy to use your phone. Even if you just have like a MagSafe mount for the new iPhones and just clamp it on your tree stand. When I'm in there, I've got a little arm. It's on my tree stand. I put it on the 0.5. That way you can go back and look at the shot. Is that helpful for you as a tracker? If someone can text you a video and say, here's how I shot it. Because you know better. Angle, say, hey, 20 feet up, 40 yards, quartering to.
What's even better with those videos is the first thing I do is I'll watch them and kind of come up with an idea of what I think happened. And then oftentimes I will send them. So the Michigan Deer Tracking Network is a network, and we have around, let's call it somewhere between 50 and 60 trackers in the Michigan Deer Tracking Network. And we use WhatsApp as a big group text. And there's been people that have been tracking. Like I said, I've got friends, a couple in particular, Daryl Maggart, he did 200 tracks, over 200 tracks the last 2 years. And Brian Alberta has done 150 plus the last couple of years in a row. And those guys, you can imagine how much they see in a season. And, so, I have either smaller group texts with guys like that and, Tony, who I mentioned earlier, or in our big group, what I do is I take that video and I send it out and I say, hey, what do you guys think? And I'll get feedback, and it'll either confirm what I'm thinking, whether that's, hey, we need to wait longer, or hey, that's not a dead deer, or, go ahead, it's probably dead right now. You should go track that thing. So the video helps a ton if you have it and it's clear. It's still guesswork, right? It's still educated guess.
But it's better than trying to remember an adrenaline-filled
it's exactly right.
split second. So, guys, if you haven't done that yet, it is so easy and it is so cheap. We're talking less than $20. I mean, heck, these camera arms that are here in the bunker, you can buy them like that. They're just like little ball things, and you can get one with a little clamp and a MagSafe, or you go Painted Arrow make some, and just mount them on your tree stand, screw them into the tree, put them on your bow stabilizer. It's the ability to do that these days. Just to you don't have to self-film. You don't have to be one of those influencer guys. This is just strictly to capture the shot to help you benefit on the back
That's right.
end.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. I think, what is that, 4 that we got to? Or is that 5?
That was...
It's close. It was 1.
Yeah. Are there any others that you can think of that are really, really crucial?
No,
things?
I mean, I think one thing that helps me in particular, I always like it when someone well marks their trail, right? Like, let's say they've tracked for 200 yards, whether it's Onyx or Hunt-wise, but also something physical. Use toilet paper, because toilet paper is biodegradable, or, flagging tape, whatever it is, and mark that, because I don't know your property. So if we get out there and you're like, I tracked it 300 yards and I think I shot it right around here. It's like, okay, great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my dog at the hit site every time, because now my dog's going to track down that line that you've already tracked, and I'm going to make sure that my dog's right. And then when we get to your last blood, I'm going to let him go. But the amount of hunters and it's not just public land, it's even sometimes their own properties that can't get us back to a hit site or a bed or things like that. I talked early on about, my dog understanding the target scent. That's why, even though I probably wasn't training him very well when we first started, now I know what we're doing, but he understood the target scent, and that's all he needed from me. So then when Tony laid me that practice track, he was able to start and get going. But if you try to say, I think it was somewhere around here and we're 50 yards off, and I'm trying to tell my dog, and, I put him down and I say, find it. And I give him the command to start looking for your deer, start tracking your deer, and we're nowhere close to where that hit site was. He's unsure of what we're tracking.
Yeah,
we have ways around that, which
you're trying to intercept that line. And,
sure. Yeah, and during rifle season, it's a lot tougher to mark an exact hit site, right? But if you're finding blood, my best advice is always to mark it. It makes it a lot easier when we come back. And especially if it, like I said, it doesn't matter for the dog if it rains, but for our human eyes, it's nice to have.
Yeah.
So it's nice to just mark it when you have confirmed.
It's so easy, too, because most hunters have small roll of toilet paper in their backpack, or just anything, snap off a twig, make sticks into an arrow,
something. But, and with the marking it on Onyx or Hunt-wise, plus that, you're doing both of those things together, and that's great. You're really setting yourself up for success.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to you for hunting a little bit. So you said the dog tracking, is what got you into hunting.
Yeah.
Are you primarily a bow hunter? Are you a gun hunter? What do you love?
So I've been tracking for, oh gosh, let me think about this. This is our 5th season.
Wow.
So this is our 5th season. And I shot my first deer with a bow last year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So it was great.
That's awesome.
I love archery. I shoot in my backyard all the time. I can't get enough of it. It's like a calming thing for me.
It's therapeutic.
Yeah,
man.
big time. I really enjoy it. I love the challenge of it. I love the challenge of the dog tracking as well. I think my wife gives me a hard time all the time about, loving to be challenged. She thinks it's funny. But I do. I love the challenge of bow hunting and trying to master something I know I'll never master.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's great.
Do you find when you're going out and you're dog tracking, do you have a higher success rate with gun hunters versus bow hunters?
Great question. No. We don't get called out on the easy ones. You're not calling me if you watched your deer drop.
Right.
There is a lot less evidence and a lot more. There's a lot more unknowns when it comes to gun hunting, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you shoot something with a bow, you're closer. We most likely are going to know the exact impact site of where you hit that deer. Hopefully, we have the arrow for evidence. And even if we don't, that's evidence in itself that it didn't pass through.
Right.
Or that it carried the arrow or whatever. Maybe we only have half of it. That tells part of the story. When, I'll give you a very quick story. A kid that I tracked for a couple times this year. I think you probably met him at the Doe Patrol event.
Yes.
Actually, yes.
Yep.
He had an instance, not the one when we were there, but he had an instance where he had shot a deer, and he was like, "Look, I'm not positive that I hit it. We didn't find any blood within like 100 and some yard radius in this field." And I was like, "Well, we'll just find out. Like, there's nothing there. There was nothing for us to go on." He said, I was around this area. I gave my dog a different command. It's for him to search for a spot versus right here's a spot. Look at this right here. And he started tracking right away and he took off. And I'm like, okay, well, you hit it because my dog's tracking it right now. And if it wasn't, my dog would just be running circles looking at us like we were crazy. And he took off on it and we found little bits of blood, but we knew nothing. We had nothing to go on, right? Where with a bow, you're more than likely going to know if you hit it or not, or if you just grazed it. There's going to be more hair sometimes. There's a lot more pieces to the puzzle.
Darker blood, like brisket meat.
Sure. And you're going to have that with gun hunters as well, but it tends to be more evidence. I can more surely tell you if I think your deer is dead or not. Once again, educated guesses, but more surely tell you if I think your deer is dead or not from bow or gun. Now, that didn't exactly answer your question of do you.
No, I understand. I mean, you shoot a deer with a 350 Legend. I mean, I've seen deer where that bullet will zip through so fast, like there's no blood, there's no fur. I mean, you're shooting it with a bow. You've got a 2-inch cutting diameter on a mechanical broadhead. That deer's dying from hemorrhage, so there's way more blood. Mine was I had one 2 years ago that was really, really odd. We thankfully didn't have to bring a dog out for it, but it was slightly quartered to.
Okay.
I was in a high tree, but not high enough because it was a longer shot, and it went in kind of in the vitals. It caught one lung and did not come out the other side. So it kind of was like a longer shish kebab. By the time we found him, it had broke through the skin, but there was no blood. I mean, there was zero blood on this deer because of the angle of the arrow. So the only place blood was coming out was just dribbling out right where that arrow was sticking out.
How'd you end up finding him?
We did circle after circle, and then it had completely gotten dark, and we turned off our flashlights, and Reed saw my Luminoc. The deer only went 110 yards.
And how long were you out there searching?
Hours.
It would have taken 110 yards on a shot like that. Would have taken a dog less than 5 minutes.
And I didn't even think about the dog aspect because I'm like, I'm not seeing any blood. I got nothing. I watched it bury all the way up to the fletching. And when we field dressed that deer, I kid you not, it seemed like every ounce of blood that deer had in his body was all internal.
Yep. That's pretty common, right? That's a very common reason that people call dog trackers. I'm going to touch on something that I didn't on our 5 things that I probably missed. And I'm sure if other trackers listen to this, they'll tell me I forgot other things as well. But one of them being the grid searching. look, if you have a dog, our best chance is that we're your first. I heard somebody say this, and I don't know who said it. I wish I could give them credit right now, but we're a great first option and a terrible last resort. A dog tracker is that dog is your best first option. So if you think you're not going to find your deer on your own, or you run out of blood, don't bring your 10 best friends and go trample all through the woods. If we can't find your deer with my dog, and you still think it's, it might be dead, or, the dog struggled that day for one reason or another, or whatever it might be, you can go out and you can trample through the woods with you and your buddies afterwards. But if you do that beforehand, you're making it much more difficult for the dog to get through it.
That makes so much sense, because you're stirring everything up. Like you were saying earlier, everything that gets disturbed is a new scent. It's a fresh scent.
Right.
Every twig you step on, every leaf you turn over, it's creating a nose jammer, in theory, of what the actual mission is, and it's throwing the deer off, or the dog off.
And you're carrying that scent around the wood, that deer scent around the woods with you too, because inevitably you or your friend are going to accidentally step in blood, and then now you have it on your boot and you're carrying it around. Even if you can't see it, you're still carrying that scent around.
What about the hormone too?
Yeah, that will still be there, right? That will still be there. Here's a good way to picture it. And I'll preface this with, sometimes dogs can march right through a grid search and have no problem, and other times dogs are going to struggle with it. No reason why or why not. Sometimes a deer that's dying just has a different scent to it. That dog is probably going to track much cleaner if the deer is truly dead. When it's not, sometimes it looks a little helter-skelter, but that's because the scent's not the same. So the dog's having a harder time because there's just not as much scent, because that deer's not going to die.
That's fascinating.
But picture this. So for your listeners, picture we got like 24 inches of snow at my house, and I couldn't believe how much less snow you had here. So picture my house in my backyard, 24 inches of snow, okay? And it's fresh. And one deer walks across the center of it, and those tracks are there, undisturbed. Now, as just from a visual standpoint, so just those deer tracks are across the center of that freshly snow. Now you put my 6 and 8-year-old daughters out there with a couple of their friends, and they start having a snowball fight and building snowman on that same field. It's going to be a lot harder to follow those tracks. Now, if you think about, that's a visual aspect of what that dog is smelling. Now,
terrible visual too. That's my biggest pet peeve.
There you go.
Disturbing
snow.
The beautiful snow. And
don't come to my house.
Yeah, right.
So that's just a good. It's not the same thing, right? Visual versus the scent, but it's a good way for our brains to try to comprehend what that dog is trying to deal with.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Okay, so my follow-up question would be, how predictable is it based on topography and where the woods are set up? Like, say for instance, we haven't called a dog tracker yet. I'm walking through the woods and the deer I know went down a certain path. How easy is it in some scenarios to be like, okay, well, likely that deer is probably going to head towards where there's cover. He's not likely to go across a wide open cornfield. Do you run into that very often, where deer will they'll double back, or they'll throw curveballs that you might not have expected? Or is it, a lot of times it's predictable? Like, oh yeah, I understand why he went that way.
There is no rhyme or reason. The uphill, downhill, goes to water when they die, all of that is out the window. There's some cases.
Dust.
Yes, it is. It is. There is, if a deer was gut shot or liver shot, they get a, from what I understand, they get a fever and they'll go to water to cool off, basically. Not dissimilar to
EHD.
Yes, yeah. Not dissimilar to EHD, where they're getting a fever and they're going to water. They're real thirsty, or they're hot, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And it's the same type of thing. They get a fever, and so they'll go to water. And so if a gut shot deer will often die near water if it can make it, if not in the water. Now, that is not the case all the time, right? This is like, if it's a gut shot and we can't find it, well, let's go check the nearest body of water. And sometimes that works out.
No way.
Now, I say that, but I'm also saying, all of your other theories are debunked. I promise you.
Yeah.
But, okay, so to your point, I've had several instances where people can't find a deer. They call us, and Jax will track to it, find it, and they're like, man, my last 2 or 3 deer died here. It's like, okay, well, maybe next time, you check that area, right? Totally understandable. But here is my watch out. You don't actually track to that area. You walk to that area. And then you get there and you grid search in that area, and a couple of your buddies are looking somewhere else. And you're like, well, it wasn't here. I can't find it. Well, last time one of my buddies shot a deer here and it died over there. Maybe I'll go check over there. And then now you just end up doing a grid search, right? So you're just doing what we're trying to tell you not to.
You're boogering it up.
That's right. Way. That's right. The best, just like I said, great first option, terrible last resort.
Let's touch on water, though.
Yeah.
So a lot of properties will have drainage. They'll have ponds. They'll have streams. How does that affect the dog?
Yeah, great question.
If a deer gets in that drainage and crosses or walks long ways.
Love this question.
Okay.
So let's say it's a creek, okay? And let's say for maybe some of my west side folks, let's say it's Crockery Creek, okay? It's moving pretty good. It's got a decent current to it. That scent is actually going to be carried down the creek with it. And so my dog might cross 20, 30, 40 yards down, we'll call it down current of where that deer crossed. Oftentimes he doesn't. Oftentimes he's pretty on, but they will sometimes cross down, or they'll work down instead of downwind, like down current, and then come back up it because they lost it or they realize they're far away from it. They'll come back up it and then cross.
Pick it up on the other side.
Yeah, they'll go across it and then so I have many stories of watching. Now, like at the time, I wasn't positive of what he was doing, but then afterwards he figured out the puzzle, whether we found the deer or saw more blood, or even if the deer wasn't fatally hit and we didn't end up finding it, I can look back on that and say, okay, I know exactly what he actually was doing right there.
That's mind-blowing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all just natural instincts of the dog.
Mm-hmm. It's understanding the target scent.
Yep.
It's their drive to work and natural instincts, right? I didn't teach my dog how to have great scent, right? I didn't teach him that. I taught him what his target scent was, and my dog has a high enough drive that he wants to work. It's his favorite thing to do. He wants his prize at the end is chewing on that deer. He wants that deer worse than me, worse than the hunter, worse than anybody there. I promise you, my dog wants that deer worse than anybody. And that drive is what it is. It's what it is, So yes, it's pure instinct and drive to want to get to the prize at the end.
Just judging by this conversation, I can see how passionate you are about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've already answered this next question, but if somebody came to you and said, hey, you have to give up hunting altogether in order to keep dog tracking, would you do it?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. But for me, like, I would say even trackers that started as hunters would probably tell you the same thing from the ones that I've talked to.
Do you find more reward in finding someone else's deer and being a part of that moment than you do harvesting your own animal?
Great question. Like I said, it was my first deer that I shot last year, at 33 years old, or I guess 32 at the time. But that was like a emotional thing for me. Like I loved the idea of harvesting my family's food. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people had given me meat from deer that Jax had found for them, which is also a very cool thing.
That's sweet.
It's really
little
cool.
bonus on top.
Yeah, exactly.
Backstrap.
Yes, exactly. It's great. And there's different levels of satisfaction from that. I love helping people find their deer. Love it because, whether it's kids or a buck, somebody's target buck or somebody's first deer, whatever. I love that. But the pleasure or the excitement for me doesn't come from finding someone's deer. It comes from watching my dog doing what it loves to do and knowing the work that we put in together to get there. The amount of hours that I spend with my dog, whether it's, actually training to track deer or hanging out at the house with my kids or, going on runs and taking him on runs with me. It's that time spent and seeing that he's doing that and like successfully doing it. Even some of our very best tracks are deer we don't find because they're not dead, because we can't find a deer that I can't make a deer dead, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's gone, it's gone. And some of our very best tracks are on that. And I try not to seem like, because I want the deer to be dead. Like I want my dog to get that prize, right? Like we keep track of our statistics and things like that. And I want to find your deer, sometimes, but more than the hunter does. But the satisfaction is from watching the dog figure out the puzzle, and it is a true challenge. You're learning to. It's not just putting the dog down and following the dog. It's reading the dog.
You understand how he works, though.
Yeah.
I can see how that would just be fascinating
It
because
is.
you're like, okay, watch what he's going to do here.
That's right.
Check this out.
Yeah.
Because you understand, you've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, even I've gone pheasant hunting with our mutual friend, Tim Bootsma from Doe Patrol.
Shout out Timmy.
Yeah. And I think that I've gone out there a couple times. I'm not sure if I've shot a single bird because I'm too busy watching the dogs work because I'm so interested in watching these dogs. So yeah, it's definitely, that's the pleasure in it for me.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. So if somebody is wanting to get into dog tracking,
Mm-hmm.
where's the first step? What are some practical things that they can do to really try to get into this? They're totally green. They don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to them?
Find somebody that's willing to help you.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people that are willing to help. There's a lot of people. Find somebody that's willing to help, but also like you can do your own research. There's, YouTube videos online like crazy, and you can get ideas there.
Unless you're a boomer, then find somebody to help.
Right. That's right. But you can take a piece of deer hide from one of your harvests or one of your friends' harvests, or do like I did. I didn't have anybody that had a harvest around me, so I ordered a piece of deer hide online. Right. There's so many different ways to do it to get started, but it's to get your dog to be good at it. To go out and do it for the general public takes a lot of work. And by that, I'm not trying to say it to scare anybody away from it, because it's worth the hard work, but it's a lot of practice to make sure your dog's good before you can just take a call from the general public. It's one thing going and tracking your buddies and being like, it's okay if my dog doesn't do a good job. But if I'm going out and someone's paying me or putting their schedule around mine or whatever for me to come out, and I'm on this list and they're trusting that I'm going to give it my best effort, and my dog's going to give it his best effort, you got to be pretty dialed in to do that.
It does make sense. With knowing what you know now, would you recommend pointy-eared dogs to people over traditional breeds?
I love this question too. I would recommend whatever dog fits your lifestyle. The dog is only tracking.
Sweet. I love that.
The dog is only tracking 3 months out of the year.
Dude, that's great.
Yeah. So like if you said a Chihuahua earlier, if a Chihuahua matches your lifestyle and you want to try it out for tracking, let's go.
Do it.
Yeah, let's go. I'd love to see it. But for me, like, your family plays into that. Your lifestyle plays into that. Are you somebody who sits around most of the time? A working dog is going to be tough for you to handle, because my dog would, he's more chill now because he's 6, but if he's sitting in the house, we had that snowstorm last week and he was sitting in the house for 3-4 days in a row. He just started sprinting around my house.
Got the zoomies.
Yeah. And yeah, sure. Maybe your average pet would get that, but it's different with a working dog.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah. It's different.
I cannot imagine. Especially breeds like that are designed to work. You look at any kind of shepherd, whether it's an Australian shepherd or like the cattle dogs or huskies. My wife made the mistake a couple years back of impulse buying a husky and did not realize what kind of breed she bought.
Very common.
We no longer have a husky.
Yeah, it's very common, and it's a sad thing, right? Like, I've been in those situations, and we could get there too, but where we got a dog and or somebody gets a dog, right? I'll just use it in a general sense. Like you get a dog and you're like, oh, this is a mistake. Like, it looked real cute. I thought I could handle this. I thought we could do this.
It had blue eyes.
Right, exactly. And I get it. And huskies are like, they're cute dogs.
Dude,
they're fluffy.
It was
they're
cute
great
until 4 a.m. when he sounded like a mini wolf.
Yeah, that's right. And
howling.
And they're huskies are escape artists. So yeah, you got to know. You got to know, does the dog fit your lifestyle? That's the number one thing.
He's contrary to the breed, he's living his best life on a fishing boat down in Florida right now.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that.
We're all good. All right. So I'm trying to think of this was an interesting topic that I wanted to touch with you. There has been an insurgence of new business models of drone deer recovery. And I knew this was going to be an interesting topic, and I want to hear from somebody who specializes in dog tracking. Is this new? I know some states it's still illegal, but I've been following, and it is fascinating to watch these videos of using thermals and people finding deer, being able to use like 10x zoom on these drones to look at and be able to like see the tines and figure out if it's your deer. Is this kind of thing do you see it as like, yeah, it's cool, we're in two totally different categories? Do you see it as a threat? Do you see it as that's gay, let's move on? like where are you at with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say, oh man, I don't see it as a threat. Let me define that. I don't see it as a threat because it's not the way I look at things. It's not the way like I'm wired to look at things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is very interesting. I have seen a drone work in multiple different ways, whether that's finding pets or finding deer or doing certain things. It's obviously not legal here in Michigan, but I have seen what it can do. I've seen what drones can do, and they are an awesome tool with limitations. And why I say that is you can't fly it if it's sunny and use the thermals to find it. If it's too sunny outside, they can't fly it. If it's in October and all the leaves are on the trees, you're not going to be able to see through the leaves. It doesn't have X-ray vision, right? So there's a lot of things there. It is a really cool tool, but it has limitations that a dog does not have. Now, does a dog also have limitations? Of course, right? A dog also has limitations. But there are two different ways to get the job done. And I think if you're just looking at pure, right, obviously you could probably, obviously I'm emotional about my dog, right? And like the pure joy of working with my dog. And so if you take that out of it and you look at it just from because you're not going to have that same relationship with your drone, right? If you take that out,
unless you're Elon Musk, that's
maybe, right? If you take that out and you just look at it from a standpoint of best chance to find your deer, you can't pick one or the other because it depends.
Like that.
It depends. You just can't. I think that there's certain situations a drone will work great, but there's also some very limiting factors.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's something also. It's like bow hunting versus gun hunting. If I'm being honest, like that's the way I would categorize it, because there's something pure and just there's something to having a dog versus just the technology. Yeah, technology is cool. I love gear and everything, but like you said, just sitting there watching something with a brain and a heartbeat, that God designed to do that way.
Yes.
You're never going to be able to touch that.
Yeah,
with technology.
Totally agree. I couldn't agree more with you. What I will tell you is that the average hunter doesn't care. They don't care about whether that, how cool it is to watch a dog.
I just want my deer.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not saying that to be crude or like poke at hunters at all. I'm not.
Just crossbow hunters.
Sure, just crossbow hunters. But I'm not saying that to be crude at all. It's just the facts is that at the end of the day, you shoot the buck of a lifetime, or your kid, right? Let's actually bring it back there. Let's not make it a selfish thing. Your kid shoots his first deer. Doesn't matter, doe, buck, button buck, who cares? Your kid shoots his or her first deer, and that is such a special moment, right? To do that, and you want to find that deer for them so bad, and you had to choose. You had to choose drone or dog to help you find that deer. You couldn't find it on your own. Both have their pros and cons. It depends on the situation, and more often than not, and of course this is because I'm skewed in this direction, but more often than not, the dog's limitations are less than the deer's. And if I'm using that dog to track, I'm going to be able to tell you the whole story of what happened to that deer. If you go and you throw a drone up over let's call it a 60-acre plot of woods, and you just fly that drone over those 60 acres, you're like, oh, deer's not here. It's not dead. That's all I had. I couldn't fly on your neighbor's property, whatever. I covered that. I can't tell you the story.
The drone's not picking up the arrow. It's not looking at every oak leaf.
Yes, that's right. The amount of evidence, arrows we've found halfway through a track, and then I pick up and I'm like, oh, you only had 4 inches of penetration. Your deer's not dead. We could stop tracking here. I'll keep going. My dog will keep going. But I can confidently tell you that the chances of your deer being dead are slim to none.
Shouldn't have used a crossbow.
that drone's never going to pick that stuff up, right?
I love it, and that's the pure form of it.
That's right.
Which I really love.
Yeah.
Let's pivot over to gear.
Okay.
Are you a gear guy?
Big time gear
Oh,
junkie.
let's go. Okay, because here at Atasso, we are gear nuts.
Yeah. So am I.
I'm gonna break this into two categories because we've got we've got Jack's gear and then we've got Alex gear. So let's go on the dog tracking side. So you get a phone call, 9:00 at night, peak rut.
Yeah.
Someone's calling you to come out and do a deer track. What are the top 5 pieces of gear that you do not leave the house without for that track?
Probably more than the average person. Actually, you know what? Trackers have a lot of stuff. First and foremost is his GPS collar.
Okay.
That's I will not put him down on a track without it.
Do you ever use long leashes?
Yes. So within the last 2 years, I have a 30-foot leash, or actually it's 33 feet.
Okay.
But in the last, I think it's 2 years, off-leash tracking has become legal in Michigan.
Oh, I didn't know that was illegal.
Yes, it was. So it used to be on-leash tracking only.
Interesting.
Yep. And now in the last 2 years, off-leash has become legal, and it's a huge difference maker.
So it's changed the game.
It totally has changed the game.
Okay. So GPS collar.
GPS collar is number one. I will not put my dog down without it. And in fact, he wears a regular, it's like a Garmin, typical like hound dog GPS collar. And then he has a collar that hooks to like cell phone connection too. So I got to back up because I've lost my dog before. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number two would be water for my dog. I think it's one thing that if you go out there without it, for my dog, he's all black. And so he gets hot pretty quick. His fur he gets hot quick. And if there's not water out there and he gets too hot to work, then we're done. There's nothing I can do. And it puts his health at risk as well. So water is number two.
Do you bring a collapsible dish?
I do. I have a really cool, because I am a gear junkie.
Let's go.
I have a very special collapsible bowl that, filters water in, and you don't have to just dump it out. It pours back in. Yeah. So, and I wear everything. I have a FHF chest rig.
Sick.
Yeah. So I have a chest rig that I wear. And then I carry
I don't know if I've heard of FHS.
FHF.
Okay.
Yeah. It's part of First Light owns it now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Or Meat Eater owns it now.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, it's FHF. I'm pretty sure I'm getting that right. I'll have to double check that now.
All right. Number 3.
Let me think about it. I do carry a leash with me on every track. Okay. So I carry his 30-foot leash with me. I usually walk him out to the hit site. Not a lot of trackers do this. I do, but I carry the leash out with me and we put him down. And oftentimes, let's say you've tracked for 200 yards. I will keep him on leash for that 200 yards, not like really strictly. Sometimes he drags it or I unclip it sooner. But basically, I'm like, I want to try to get through these 200 yards that you've already tracked as quick as we can. And then I'm going to unclip him as soon as we get there. I'm going to unclip his leash and then let him go do his thing. But we already know that the deer went this way. So I'm just going to, we're just going to have him on leash and whatever. We're going to try to cut through the BS and get to where you stopped and unclip him. Also, anybody that's been around a high prey drive Belgian Malinois or German Shepherd, which my dog is a little bit of both, knows that when they get to what they're looking for, you don't really want to mess with that. So,
oh boy.
So his prize, I said it earlier, but his prize is that deer. And so having that leash,
my deer now.
Yes, it is his deer after we find it. Having that leash is very key to hold him back while we drag the deer out or while you gut it. So that way he's not gutting you.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about that. It'd be interesting to see how other dog breeds react to that too, or if it's just specifically the ones that are
some are fine. Some, Brian, I talked about Brian Alberto a little bit ago. He has a bloodhound and he has a lab, and both of them, they don't really care about the dead deer. They're doing it because they love doing their job and they love Brian, and we give him a hard time. He carries, I think it's called like Brumschweiger or something. It's like some type of German wet meatloaf. I don't know. And so they get excited about that. So they don't necessarily get defensive over the deer.
It's the kryptonite. You got to find what Jack's kryptonite is.
Yeah. You have to find basically what that dog's reward is what it loves the most. So
If it's a military dog, probably cocaine or fentanyl.
There you go. There it is. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so the leash I do carry. I also carry a pistol with me.
Okay. So that's number 4.
Yeah.
That's your sidearm.
Yeah, I carry it in a chest harness under
Break
my
it
chest
down
rig.
for us. What do we got?
It's a SIG P320.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any optics? Any lights?
No, it's pretty simple. I keep it in my chest rig. And then I'm glad you brought up. So I have like a chest harness for the pistol, and my chest rig goes over that. I have a headlamps with extra batteries.
Nice.
So that's huge because if I get out there in the dark, it's all over.
Coming from somebody this time of year it's tough because it gets dark. Anytime I'm working on projects, I'm outside. So somebody who is in the dark a lot, what is a headlamp brand that you would recommend? Because the ones that I get, they rip through batteries like no one's business.
Which ones are you using now? Do you know off the top of your head?
My guess is either the eBay or Amazon special.
Yeah, there's I think it's called Through Light. I'm actually looking it up right now.
Okay.
I have no service down here in a bunker, believe it or not.
I've got Wi-Fi.
No,
we'll hook
that's
up
all
to it
right.
later.
I'm pretty sure it's called Through Night, or maybe it's True. But
don't let me forget.
Okay.
Afterwards, I want to get that from you.
Yep.
Because I need a good headlamp.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I have failed miserably on.
The battery runs at full power for about like an hour.
Okay.
And then I have a little case in my chest rig, and it starts flashing, and I just change out the batteries.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 5. All right, let's pivot away from dog tracking then, and let's talk. You're heading into the whitetail woods. For you personally, what are the top 5 pieces of gear that you actually? I'm sorry, I have to back up. What's the one piece for the dog tracking aspect? What's the one piece of gear that you have? It doesn't have to be in that top 5. What's the one piece of gear every time you pull it out, you get fired up and excited because you're so glad you bought it?
Oh man.
And it's like Christmas morning every time it's in your hand.
I love that question. You know what? Honestly, this is really funny, but it's probably not going to be the reason why you think of it. I have a pair of pants that I mostly wear. I've got a couple pair of in their brush pants. They're actually First Light brush pants, but it's not about the pants, right? Like first of all, as a tracker, talk about putting gear through the ringer. Like anyone that thinks they put gear through the ringer, I promise you, trackers do 10 times worse because we're going where no person goes. We're swimming full kit. We're brushing through everything. But these First Light pants I've had for I don't know what they're called, but they're the briar proof ones. And I've had them for like 4 seasons and they work great. But the reason why they're my favorite, other than like saving my legs from being totally chewed up, is that when I get them out, whether they've been freshly washed or whether I've had them away for 6 months, whatever, it doesn't matter. If I get them out, my dog goes crazy.
He's like, Dad, it's time.
It's exactly.
Let's go.
He knows right away. And it's usually the first thing I get out, like when we're about to go on a track or something, and he goes nuts. And that's why they're my favorite piece.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I freaking love that.
Yeah.
All right, now let's pivot to you. Whitetail Woods.
Yeah.
Give me the top 5.
Man, for me, because I'm not very experienced, right? So I would say I'm still trying to understand what I need and what I don't need, which has been fun because
that's great
because I am a gear guy.
Yeah.
I have a Matthews bow. I don't know much about it.
Weapon aside.
Okay, weapon aside.
So weapon doesn't count. We know that's a given. The Matthews always goes to the woods. So besides your weapon.
What's my go-to to bring out with me? I feel like it's unfair for me to say just because I haven't been out as much as most people that probably listen. But
this is you though. This is all about you. Who cares what other people think? This is all about you. I mean, it could be your granola bar.
Yeah, right.
Like it could be anything.
No, I'm not I don't bring many snacks out with me. I don't bring many snacks. Man, it's a great question. What I think I've changed. I think I love. I think it's probably the chest rig as well. Like I think it's the chest rig.
So do binos fit in that one too?
They can.
Okay.
They can. Yeah, I have like a instead of binoculars, I have like a mono.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because it just fits in there better. And
okay,
so I carry.
So you're running a mono instead of binos.
Yeah, I think it's just because it fits in there better.
That's cool.
But that chest rig carries everything. Like I can stick my phone. I've got like attachments for my phone and everything. So
that's what I'm saying. Abolish the fanny pack.
Yes.
Chest rigs only.
It's the way to go. It's the way to go.
I'll
It
dap
really
up
is.
any guy I see at Disney World wearing a chest rig.
There you go. That's right. That's right. I totally, if I could get away with wearing it around more often, I totally would. I love it.
It's kind of I get why a lot of guys do the crossbodies because they're a little less.
I can't do it.
Incognito.
I can't do it.
No.
There's some really cool.
I don't swing that way.
There's some really cool carry ones though, like that.
I've seen those.
Yeah, but I still can't do it.
Okay, so the chest rig's a big one.
It is, yeah, because I can put anything else in it. Yeah.
Yep. What are you running for, like tree stands?
So I couldn't even tell you, honestly. I
love it. This is so cool that you're
I'm that fresh into it. I'm telling you.
No, you're not that fresh. You're that passionate about dog tracking that it's cultivating your hunting experience, which is so cool.
I won't. So I have 5 acres in Robinson Township, and my neighbor, who's also a dog guy, but a duck dog guy.
Oh, cool.
And so we've connected over that. Awesome dude. His name's Jeff. Jeff kind of let me, hunt his property as well because the deer kind of walk in between. He's got 20 acres and go back there. But I just hunt from the ground. My deer that I killed last year, my first year, was in a tree stand. Actually, the tree stand was in Tim's parents' backyard.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. But I have heard, I'm sure everybody has, but so many horror stories about, poor, and I'm haven't got there where I'm confident in my own abilities to hang a tree stand yet. Yeah. So I'm like, all right.
Ladder stands are tried and true.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody else, not to I need to be taught better. I need to know better in order to be like, okay, I'm going to do this by myself. How about that?
We're only an hour away, so we'll do some summer workshops here.
There we go. Perfect.
I'm all about it. All right, well, let's focus. Let's dive a little bit deeper into Alex Hunt. If that sounds good to you.
Sounds great.
I want to know what you're passionate about. What drives you?
Yeah. My family, first and foremost. My family does.
Where does that come from? How did you develop that?
Oh man. Probably my dad. Probably my dad. And my wife. My dad is like one of the most loving people on the planet. And so I think from him and like watching him, how he cares for people and cares for me and my 2 sisters. Yeah. But then also, that's probably where it started, of knowing that like I something that I wanted.
What a blessing to have that example. Yeah. Growing up.
Yeah. And then I would say, obviously my wife, Lexi, we got married, when I was fresh out of college. And then that is also what drives that, to want to, build a family, the want to build a family with her and then my daughters, and how important that's become in my life and everything that I do. But I would say, like, when you first say that, my family and then leadership with my family, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I look at that in so many different ways. I'm in a leadership role at my job now, which I truly love, that part of it. It's just, I think it's diving into different ways to develop as a leader in the communities, but a lot of it comes back to, okay, if I'm developing as a leader, doing these different types of things around my life, how is that impacting my family? Mm-hmm. And how is it impacting my, my wife and my 2 daughters? And what example am I setting? Every day I push my kids out the door as much as I can with work. As most of the time I drop them off to school, and they're 6 and 8, and so they don't totally get it yet, but I'm trying to put the breadcrumbs in there, right? And I push them out the door, and I tell them, I say, hey, be a good leader. And they oftentimes finish my sentence. They know what I'm going to say, and I'm sure it drives them nuts, right? But so I say that to them, and I truly mean it. And I think they'll continue to get to know it. But I think that if I'm telling them that, then I have to show that. And I think, so when you ask what I'm passionate about, it's my family, and it's, being a leader for my family, and not just for them, but setting an example for them of being a leader in any place that I'm at, or try to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a blessing those girls have too, to have that example. I mean, it's a trickle down effect.
It is.
And it just like, hopefully that equips them to pass that to the next generation as well.
Yeah.
All right. So go back to middle school or high school Alex.
Okay.
If you could transport back there right now, what is a piece of advice, life advice, that you would give Alex? not buy Bitcoin or
No,
stuff like that, but
No,
like
it wouldn't be.
real life advice of
Yeah.
something that you've learned in the last couple decades.
I'd be afraid to give him advice because I think that I screwed up just enough that I could learn from the mistakes that I made. And so I would be afraid to give high school dummy Alex a piece of advice that then I wouldn't screw up and be able to learn from those screw ups.
I love that. That is the best answer we've gotten to that question.
Yeah, I think that like,
don't mess with the universe.
yeah, don't mess with the universe.
You're here for a reason.
Yeah, I don't think that like by no means do I think where I'm at is perfect or anything like that. I still have a lot to learn, but my point is that
it's the sum of all of the experience you.
I want to learn those things. I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier. Actually, he's one of my very closest friends. He's more like family. His name's Brandon McKnight, and I met him through work. And we were having a a conversation, and it was just about like, these things happen and you learn from them, and then you're able. They don't happen for you. They happen for other people. So whether it's the positive or negative things that happen in your life, it's not for you. It's for the people around you so that you can teach those people. So like if something bad happens, right? If this, of course it's easy to say this when I'm sitting here and nothing currently bad or terrible or tragic is happening to me, right? But if something bad happens to you, it's not happening for you or to you. It's happening so that way you can maybe overcome it and teach other people about it.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in that, of where no matter what happens in life, no matter how drastic, it's all happening for a reason. And we might not know what good is going to come out of it. Maybe 10 years from now, maybe never. But as long as you keep that at the forefront of your mind of like, somehow, some way, no matter how fricked up this situation is, there's going to be some good that's going to come out of it. You're going to come out of the back end of that just such a strong person.
Yeah, 3 years ago, maybe even less. I would have made fun of myself for saying that, or my wife certainly probably still would give me a hard time for saying it because I hated it, and still like kind of like if somebody says everything happens for a reason, it's like, well, that's really tough to say to somebody who's really going through it, right? But I think that I hated that because it took the control away from me. And now I'm realizing like I don't have that control. I don't have that control of all these things that happen in our lives. And I think
that's how you respond to it.
Yes, that's what you can.
It's how you react and how you pivot and stuff like that.
That's right.
Stuff comes in and out of our life for a reason. I still do think we have autonomy to a certain extent.
Oh,
we do have control. Like,
absolutely.
If I decided to go out and rob a bank tomorrow,
right? That's on you. That's on you.
Exactly. So like we still have control, but it's how we respond.
Yes.
And how we grow and we learn from situations that come across our path.
Yeah, great way to put it.
That was a great answer. Okay, so my next follow-up question would be, what is something that you have learned in the past couple of years that changed the way you think?
Something I've learned in the past couple of years that changed the way I think. I don't know if I can point to one specific thing. Okay. I don't know if I can, but I can point to maybe several events, right?
Okay.
I would say my faith has really changed the way I think about a lot of things. And I grew up in a small Lutheran church. My parents still go to that church.
It's awesome.
And all of my childhood memories are either playing baseball or at that church. Like we were either there or I was playing baseball.
Those darn Lutherans are loyal.
That's right. That's right. And I didn't, then I went to Hope, which is a Christian college. And I think when I got there, I really pushed faith off because I didn't like in a lot of ways that it was portrayed. And I'm not like picking on Hope by any means. I think just in general, I think that I struggled with how it was, call it Bible thumping, call it whatever you want to call it. But I really struggled with making it my own at that point in my life. And so I grew up in the church, and then, my wife and I got married. She didn't grow up with religion in her family, but it was something she was always chasing.
Interesting.
She would go with her friends. She was like the polar opposite of how I grew up. Like I grew up going to the church that I was like,
but you're living your parents' faith.
Yeah, and I was almost running away from it, where she was running to it so hard. I mean, she got baptized the day before we got married, and like we didn't really even dive into it then. We're going to the church, and she was singing at the church I grew up in, and then we move out to Robinson Township, or very close to Allendale, and we weren't really going to church. We had moved away, and I was okay with it. It wasn't like being pushed in it. And I never like walked away from God or my beliefs or anything like that. I just wasn't really exploring them. And my oldest daughter at the time, I don't remember how old she was. She's 8 now, I guess. Let's call it 3 or 4. And she had said, "Hey, can we do that thing where we all hold hands before we eat?" And my wife goes, "Pray?" And she goes, yeah, I want to do that thing. And right then, my wife was like, all right, that's it. Like the fact that she didn't know what that was, right? But she wanted to do it. Like that is, she was very intent on like, that's us screwing up. Like this is something that I want. And she really pushed me to get back into it. And so I guess you said, what is one moment? I guess it would be my daughter saying that, right? Moment. Yeah, it's a big pivotal moment because it's changed. Like I always had this faith in my life, but it's really pushed me. I mean, I lead a group of high school boys now at the church.
Dude,
and, so like all of these things have changed me and really pushed me to do more things that I'm passionate about, such as be in leadership type positions. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as the leadership aspect goes, now pivoting back to the dog tracking aspect, what is something that you want to do over the next however many years?
Yeah.
2 to 5 years. What's something that you want to do to change the industry?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Love that question. So, okay. So I think as trackers, right? This is maybe going to catch me some flack from some friends, but I think we do a really fake job of being friends. Okay. So here's what I mean by that.
You're talking in the tracking world?
In the tracking world.
Okay.
So me and my close group, there's a close group of 3 other guys. Actually, our wives and us are all going out to dinner next weekend, and we're from all over the state, and it's great.
So cool.
It's a really cool core group, and I've talked about some of them so far. But like that's different. But then, and everybody has these small groups, and we go to these events all over the country and do these things. But it's still very like separate and like, and I think the hunting world does, and once again, I'm new to this, but I think the hunting world does a poor job of like, you jokingly pick on crossbow hunters. I think it's hysterical, right? It's funny, and you're right, and everybody has those jokes. But in a general sense, I think we pick on each other too much, right? Like whether it's because I got a pointy-eared dog, or because we're from Michigan and the people down south, they run white-tailed deer with their hounds, or whatever it is. And I think we separate ourselves too much. And so I think that like, how do you find ways to come together more than you find ways to separate? So that's my first thing. I don't know if I will change that because that's a big thing that I see. However,
don't doubt yourself.
Yeah,
baby.
but
Come on.
However, one thing that I am very passionate about, and it's probably because I'm a pointy-eared dog guy, is obedience. I think that our working dogs, our pets, 90% of the time, and they're working dogs 10% of the time, right? It's a very short time of the year. And even within that day that they're working versus being a pet in your house, or even if it's an outdoor dog in a kennel run or whatever. But most trackers have their dogs are also pets. Most of them, I'd say their dogs probably sleep in bed with them, right? And I think that obedience is so overlooked that it puts you or your family or whatever in a bad situation where maybe that dog's not going to work out, or maybe like, hey, this dog's a great tracker, but I don't even like this dog because he's a jerk around the house. And so it's like, okay, I'm passionate about obedience and I love it. And I'm not like a master dog trainer by any sense, but I think that like for the average dog tracker out there, I think I could help the average dog tracker. So I would love to go to one of these events that I'm talking about and be able to teach more obedience to some of these trackers because it shows on a track. Okay.
I smell a YouTube channel coming.
Watch out. No, there's a couple really good guys out there that do, and girls that do dog training, women. and men that do dog training out there and do stuff on YouTube, and I pick up a lot of stuff from them and take, and that's what it's all about.
But none of them are dog trackers
That is true.
with pointy-eared dogs.
That's true. Yeah, there's a couple things there.
You got a niche.
So I think that like there's okay, so this is where I was going to go with that. Imagine you call a dog tracker, okay? And they show up to your house or your woods, right, where you're hunting, your property. And they come out, they get them out of the car, and the dog just busts out of the car, and they're yelling, hey, Fido, 100 times to get the dog to listen to them, right? And then they get to the track, and the dog's so excited to be there because he wants to work, right? They can't get the leash on it. They can't get the dog's harness on it. They can't get the collar on it because it won't sit still. Well, dog won't sit still because it's so excited. You can't blame the dog. The dog knows what it's there to do, but the dog's going crazy because it's so excited to work. All right, dog's really good at its job. Okay, you get it. It's you finally get the collar on, you get the leash on, you get whatever. What are you thinking as a hunter while you're watching this tracker not be able to control his dog?
Like, geez, what did I do?
What did I just get myself into? Right? Then you go to the hit site, right? And you're trying to, as the tracker, I'm trying to evaluate the hit site. Is your arrow there? Is there blood on the ground? What does it look like? How far was it from your tree stand? And I'm holding my leash, and I'm like, you know what? Whatever, find it. And I put the dog down, tell him to start tracking. Now imagine this story. You pull up, guy opens a crate in his car, okay? And the dog's sitting in the crate. You put the collar on the dog. You turn the GPS on. You put the harness on the dog. The dog's still excited. The dog wants to be there. It's excited to be there. Don't get me wrong. My dog's not perfect. He's fired up to be there. He's waited all day for this. He's fired up. You walk them out to the hit site. You sit the dog down, the dog sits and it stays, and you go and you look at the hit site. You look, you said it was a 15-yard shot. This looks like it's 60, like you're looking at the evidence. You're sitting there, and then you say, okay, I think, we're ready to track now. And then I look at my dog and I say, find it. And he gets up from his sit and he sprints to that hit site, puts his nose down, starts tracking. The picture right there is a lot different, right? And it's maybe that other dog
it's coming from your polished sales realm and like wanting the whole experience to be professional through and through. I see it. Like it's all about, you're literally painting a PR thing. Like, that's what it is.
That the other dog might be better, or it might be just as good. Let's say just as good as its job. But like, what are we portraying as trackers to hunters? Right?
And do you want referrals?
Exactly. And it's not, and I don't even think about it from an individual standpoint. I think about it from the world of trackers in general. It's like when I go out there, I don't just feel like I'm representing myself or pointy-eared dog guys. I feel like I'm going out there and I'm representing the Michigan Deer Tracking Network. I'm representing trackers across the country. Right. And I'm representing, like, if you have a bad experience with a tracker, you're going to tell your friends that you had a bad experience, and they're going to tell their friends, right?
And then potentially how many deer are going to get left in the woods.
Exactly.
Then they're going to call the dumb drone guy to come out.
There you go. That's right.
Dude, I love that. That's super cool.
Yeah. So obedience in the tracking world, I think, is something that's oftentimes overlooked.
That's where you could stand above the pack with like a YouTube channel or something. You just like little things here and there because it's you're not only pairing that obedience with working dogs in an outdoor environment. And it's not just pointy-eared dogs. It could be hounds. It could be anything. It could be pointers. It could be
that's right.
Any kind of dog.
And working dogs have such a drive that you can teach them anything. Working dogs are so malleable because like they want to please you or they want that prize, right? Like you can train working dogs to do almost anything because of the drive that they have, as long as you have a reward at the end for them.
I love it. All right, so let's go into two last questions before we go into our lightning round.
Okay.
I want to know what your longest track was, and then I want to know what your favorite, most memorable track was.
Okay. Longest track in distance or longest track in hours after the shot?
Distance.
Okay. So I've done several that are over 2 miles.
Jeez, oh Pete.
Now, and to a tracker, that's not going to seem like much. And here's why I say I've never found one that's gone that far, but we've been able to confirm it, and they're great tracks. Whether it's broken leg and we couldn't catch it, or we have found one that was over 1 mile, but we've never found one that pushes on 2.
What's the average distance of where you say if we get to this point?
All depends on the shot.
Okay.
Good question, though. But it all depends on the shot. And what my dog's doing. Is my dog tracking super confidently? Well, I love watching my dog work. I'll follow him. if we have the property permission, we'll go. And until I'm like, okay, look, you shoulder shot this deer. We know because you didn't have much penetration. My dog's still tracking it, but like, it's not, it's not dead 500-600 yards in, 700-800 yards in. It was a shoulder shot. It's probably not dead, right? It's probably not going to die. But yeah, I would say there's a couple. There's one. It's like broken legs we can't catch for whatever reason. We just can't get to it. It's still healthy enough that it's running fast enough. We can't get to it, and it gets onto another property, and we just couldn't get close enough to it to dispatch it or have the hunter dispatch it.
It's wild. I've seen deer in the past that are missing one leg, or whether they got hit by a car or something. When they walk, it's really awkward and they walk slow, but when they run, they can run like normal.
Yeah, it is really, and it just depends on how fresh the injury is. I mean, we've had broken deer or broken leg deer that we found a couple days after the shot because, somebody was like, oh, hey, this deer came back. We shot it a couple days ago. We couldn't find it. Now it came back and we actually saw it. It's hobbling on 3 legs. And then I get out there right away and we, try to, basically it's me running behind my dog through the woods, chasing after him. And then the hunter dispatches the deer.
Got it.
Yeah. I'll also go with the longest time wise because I think this is
yeah.
I like
split
this.
it up for me.
Okay, so longest time wise was I don't even know the exact time. Somewhere close to 30 hours. Which once again to
smokes.
Yeah, to trackers would not seem too crazy. Okay, because there's trackers out there that if that have found over 30 hours plus, and now its conditions have to be right, all these things, right? But when I first started, there was somebody who told me I had, because he was a Shepherd Malinois mix, hey, your dog is going to be a hot track dog, a hot nose dog, basically meaning like anything under 7, 12 hours, anything under 12 hours, your dog's going to do great on.
Okay, buddy.
But anything over that, it's going to struggle because it's just not the type of breed it is. And, I think older, like I'm older, I'm ageism there, but, people who have hound dogs of whatever sorts, any kind of hound dog, like, they may think this because they've been told this, right? And I have a pointy-eared dog, and like I said, I'm not a hunter.
That dog won't be able to find its nuts.
Right. I'm not a hunter. I don't know what I'm doing, and I have this pointy-eared dog that I didn't get for this purpose, but I'm training for this purpose. So I think it was a lack of belief in me and a lack of belief in my dog. And so finding anytime now I find a deer that's over 20 to 24 hours old, which is, common in what we do. Anytime I find it, but still more difficult, depending on conditions, I find a deer in that range. I'm always like, it's like that check. Like I always remember when somebody told me
virtual
that.
flipping the bird.
Yeah,
it's that
right.
chip on the shoulder.
It is the chip on the shoulder, man.
You thought.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. And what was your other question?
Most memorable. What's one that sticks with you? Where you're like, holy smokes, I'll never forget that.
Yeah. There's one that sticks out to me right away. I'm not sure why it's the one that sticks out to me. I have a couple that are, some fun stories. There's actually, I know why this sticks out to me. It's maybe not going to surprise you after talking to me for however long we've been down here. One, it was, we found it, but I totally screwed up and I learned from it. And so that's why it's so memorable to me because I learned, I think the ones that really stick out to me are the ones where I feel like I screwed up. And then I can learn from it later, and I try not to make that mistake again. And then it's the person that we found it for and what their reaction was. So this guy's buddy calls me. I'll try to make the story shorter, but this guy's friend calls me and he goes, look, I got my friend into hunting. He's really enjoying it, but he shot his first buck and we can't find it. Okay, no big deal. Whatever. They're by Crockery Creek. I talked about it earlier. So we go down and the arrow looked really good. Like the arrow looked like probably like liver blood. And I know that doesn't look good to a hunter, but to a tracker, if I have a gut shot arrow or a liver arrow, I know you're probably not going to be able to find it without my help. And my dog is going to love this track. So it was liver. And we get down and he immediately gets on the track and is working great. Okay. My dog doesn't particularly love to swim. We get to this creek and he keeps like dipping down into this creek. Remember what I told you earlier? How it kind of goes with the current, and it does this really sharp turn. And the scent actually sometimes will get sucked down into the water. So like if you have like this dip down, so the scent will come and pool on top of the water. So he kept going and he kept like sticking his nose on top of the water. And I'm like, this dude, and the water's moving pretty fast. And I'm like, this dude my dog doesn't want to cross because he doesn't like the water. And this is probably our second or third. This might have been our second year in. And I'm like, I'm getting angry because I'm like, you know what? Just cross here. Like it's probably, let's call it 30 yards across. And I'm like, it's going to be deep. I'm going to get wet, whatever, but we need to cross. So I was like, come on, let's go. And he like waded in the water and looked at me. And then he spit back up onto the bank. He went up onto the bank, down current,
Downstream.
spit back up. And then I was like, hey, get back here. We're going across the water. I know you wanted to cross here. Like, I know you did. I saw you. And he's like very reluctantly, like it took me convincing him, dragging him back. And I basically pushed him across the water. He swam across. I'm like, all right, I'm going across with him. And I told the hunter to stay there. I ended up immediately, this is like karma for me pushing him across the water. The water was way deeper than I thought. I'm in full kit, like chest rig, boots, everything, sweatshirt. I'm 10 steps in and boom, I'm swimming. And I am swimming across. It's really deep. I'm swimming across. I get to the other side. I'm freezing cold. The hunters ask me if I'm all right. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. By the time I get and like gather my bearings and check to make sure my phone still works, Jack's already swam back across to the other side. And he was like, this, and I was like, crap, it wasn't
like,
right.
Dad.
It was not right.
It's like,
we did some searching in some other area, but eventually he brought us back to the original track. And remember how I said he jumped back up? Like I had pushed him in other areas where he had no interest in being, but I was like pushing him in these bedding areas. He had jumped back up he went back to that spot where he had jumped back up and, out of that bank and had gone downwind and used the kind of current and the wind to like come back here, and I yanked him back down. I didn't let him go the extra 20 yards he wanted to go. Well, we get back over in that area and I'm nearing giving up. And he does like, you ever seen like a video of a fox in the Arctic diving on a mouse in the snow? He does that. He does this like dive straight down and boom, this buck jumps up and gets up, tries to run away and smashes into a tree. And then the guy got another arrow in it and it died.
No freaking way.
We were less than 20 yards from that buck the whole time. When I convinced him to go back into the water, because that scent was no doubt not only going down current, but pooling down in that water, coming down into that water. And remember when I said liver and gut sometimes go to water? Yeah. That deer was less than 20 yards.
No way.
And it was my dumb mistake of not letting him do what he wanted to do and thinking... And now I can read him better than I could in my second year, but that's why that one stuck out to me. Now, this hunter, he was a kid. I mean, 20, he was in college. I think he was going to veterinary school. And
so he knew anatomy? Come on.
Sure, right. He didn't, he wasn't well off. Okay. And his buddy had told me that going in, but his buddy's like, I'll take care of him if he needs to. Mm. So the guy had never got a deer before. And I had to go. I was like, I don't remember
fighting hypothermia.
I was soaking wet, and I had to go. And I was like, and I didn't really. I mean, second, like I said, I got into this. This guy doesn't want me to gut his deer, right?
Yeah.
And unless he wants to see a science experiment. Well, I've gotten better, but at that point in time, so I call his buddy. I'm like, hey, you need to come help him. Whatever. He's elbows deep in this deer, and I gotta go. Like, I'm sorry. I wish I could stay, but I've got to get going. And he's like, okay. And the kid was like, hey, look, I didn't even think about him, tipping me at the end because I kind of knew, and I was just excited to help this kid out. A week later, he texts me and he says, hey, what's your address? And I told him what it was. And an hour later, he shows up at my house with a handwritten card thanking us and a bunch of venison from that deer that he had shot, which was his first buck. And so that one sticks out to me, not only because of the mistake that I made and my dog, found the deer, even though I almost screwed him up, even though I did screw him up, but then also like how thankful that kid was to not only like, to write me a letter, right? Like hand write me a letter.
That's and rare, then that generation.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
Shout out Gen Z. If you still do handwritten notes.
Yeah.
Come on.
So there you go.
Dude, that it just to me really kind of solidifies the passion that you have for it. And that solidifies also your leadership skills and everything that you do, whether it's work, whether it's play, because you right then and there admitted, I screwed up, but I used this as a learning experience.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
I appreciate that.
I really like.
Appreciate
that's huge. All right, let's go into our lightning round.
All right. I overthink things, so let's see how good I am at a lightning round.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw a bunch of. There's actually one question on here that's gonna bomb. but I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay.
For the guests. So this is going to be like first. Actually, a lot of these. We'll see. I'm very interested. So this is going to be like first knee-jerk reaction.
Can't wait.
That's the answer.
I'm ready.
For you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Would you rather shoot a Boone and Crockett typical or non-typical whitetail?
Non-typical.
Okay, I like it. Would you rather own a 3,000-acre high-fence ranch in Texas or a 500-acre unfenced farm in Michigan?
The farm in Michigan.
I love it. Would you rather be mauled by a bear or bit by a rattlesnake?
Oh, bit by a rattlesnake.
All right.
Mauled by a bear sounds horrible.
A little more badass, though, when you show up to the hospital.
That is true. That is true.
Would you rather be attacked by a moose or a wild boar?
Oh, man. I saw a wild boar. Okay. I'm going to say wild boar.
Okay.
This lightning round, I almost gave you a story. Keep going.
Would you rather go on an all-expense Wyoming elk hunt or Canadian moose hunt?
The elk hunt. I think elks are fascinating.
They are. They're so cool. What is your favorite outdoor brand?
It's probably First Light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Go-to snack in the field.
Go-to snack. I don't bring snacks.
He doesn't bring snacks.
I bring snacks for my dog. I bring treats for the dog.
If anything, this is going to motivate you. You got to bring snacks. You need sustenance. All right. You have a bounty on your head. Would you rather be hunted by Ted Nugent or Fred Bear?
Fred Bear, I think. Ted Nugent kind of scares me. I listened to him on a couple podcasts. I don't want to be hunted by that guy.
The mystical flight of the arrow. All right. Would you rather step on a bear trap or fall from a tree stand?
A bear trap. Like I said, I heard some stories about tree stands, dude.
Yeah.
Bear trap.
Yeah. All right. You have to kill a deer. All you have is jumper cables, vice grips, paracord, and a sand wedge.
Oh, sand wedge.
No. These are all your items. How do you do it? This is all you have in your backpack. Jumper cables, vice grips, paracord, and a sand wedge. How do you kill the deer?
I am lassoing the deer with the paracord, and I'm trying to make it as swift as possible with the wedge.
With the sand wedge.
With the sand wedge.
I love it. That's amazing. All right. Where can people find you?
Yeah.
Give us the plug.
Yeah. So Hunt's Canine Game Recovery on Facebook. I'm not great at updating it, but I need to be better. But you can find me on there. And my Instagram has lots of different things, mostly with my family. But during tracking season, lots of stories of Jax on there. And it's O2A Hunt.
O2A Hunt.
That's right.
We will plug all of that in here.
Yeah.
The links to those for you.
One more thing I'd say is there's an app. If you search it, if you're a Michigan hunter and you search MDTN, it's Michigan Deer Tracking Network, and it's an app. And if you download it and you click on it, it has a GPS of where you're at, and it will show you who the closest tracker is to you. You click on that pin, it'll open up, it'll tell you everything about that tracker. It'll tell you their name, what dogs they have, their dogs' ages, and it'll tell you a little bio about them.
Cool.
And then it opens up a little link where you can click to text them or call them.
It's amazing.
That app is super helpful. It's better than a list because you can see exactly who's closest to where your real-time location is.
I wish we could just, at the end of the day, just clone you and put you everywhere.
There we go.
In every county.
There we go.
Just or copy paste.
There we go. Eventually, I would love to have, my retirement plan is to be tracking and having dogs, and be doing this for a long time. So,
with your leadership skills, I definitely see in the education realm of it. I mean, you even at the beginning of the show said you were destined to be a teacher. Failed
gym teacher.
So
there you go. That's right.
Amazing. Well, dude, thanks for taking the time. You're super interesting, super knowledgeable, and I'm super excited to get to know you better. We'll get you back here in the summer when you can actually smoke a cigar.
Perfect.
When you're not training for an ultra,
which
is still mind-blowing to me.
Sounds good, man.
It's awesome. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate it. We try to upload as many episodes as we can. Things are a little bit slow in the winter, so bear with us. Thanks for your patience. Check us out on Instagram. It's atasso.outfitters. That's where we post a lot of our reels and stuff off of these episodes and any photos and video that we take and whatnot. These episodes, if you like watching your podcast in a video format rather than audio, full-length episodes are on YouTube if you'd rather consume it that way. Other than that, Audio's on all other platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of that stuff. And then last but not least, our website is atasooutfitters.com. That's where our merch store is at. That kind of helps keep everything on the bandwagon here. That's where our About Us page is at and kind of what our story is and what we're all about. So feel free to hop over and check that out. Other than that, we love you guys. We appreciate you guys, and we will catch you on the next episode. Have a great night.